A lot of times, some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see. The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business. But it's not as if I know all the details. It was a contract negotiation that was going on. ESPN certainly did not want to lose her. But in the end, rather, she made a decision.
Stephen A. Smith isn't just Molly Qerim's former co-host. He's the man who allegedly held her career hostage, and sources say he's still got the receipts. While the rest of the world watched Qerim's careful September 15th Instagram send-off, after much reflection, I've decided it's time to close this incredible chapter. We watched something entirely different, a split screen between her polished goodbye and Smith's on-air eulogy, every word of his first take tribute sticking like a half-eaten apology. He called her an enormous part of our success for a decade, voice thick with performative sorrow. But if you actually listened to that segment, listened, not just heard, it wasn't a farewell, it was a victory lap. This wasn't closure. It was a masterclass in control delivered by a man who, if whispers from inside BRISTOL are to be believed, never let Qerim forget who was holding the key.
Molly is a friend. Molly is a coworker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years.
Now, here's the angle they don't want you chasing. Behind every staged embrace and careful PR statement, there's a blackmail theory gaining steam among insiders who actually saw the power plays up close. Not just the "we couldn't agree on numbers" narrative, not just the "her contract was up anyway" line that ESPN keeps peddling. No, we're talking about a toxic standoff where the stakes weren't just dollars and airtime. They were reputations, secrets, and threats. Marcellus Wiley cracked the door on his Hydration Situation podcast, making it clear this was about more than an anchor wanting a raise. When he signs off on you, you get what you want. When he doesn't, you don't. It wasn't just a casual remark, it was a veiled warning. Wiley, a guy who's played enough NFL snaps to recognize a hostile locker room, practically spelled it out. Approval from Stephen A. was the only currency that counted. And according to multiple voices close to the set, Qerim knew the real price: compliance or else.
Don't tell us the details, then tell us you're not going to tell us the details.
And then add on that, I don't know the details. Like, man, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Like he said this. He said she abruptly resigned. That's the detail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to say, but don't ask me the details because I'm not going to tell y'all the details. That's none of y'all business.
So why would a pro like Molly Qerim, someone who spent a decade toe-to-toe with Smith in a parade of ego-heavy co-hosts, suddenly walk out on a $500,000 salary, her own fan base, and a cushy seat on ESPN's flagship show? Not with a bang, not with a fight, but with a dignified "thanks for the memories" post and a swift, silent exit, leaving ESPN scrambling for a replacement. We're told she didn't just want a raise. She wanted a bigger seat at the table, maybe even her own show, or at least the chance to build something new within the company. Instead, she got the corporate version of a cold shoulder, requests denied, negotiations stonewalled. According to those circling the situation, the real reason Qerim never pushed back in public wasn't some sudden wave of gratitude or the next exciting chapter lurking just off camera. No, the darker explanation is this. Stephen A. Smith, with his 9-figure contracts and legendary leverage, reportedly threatened to leak personal details about Qerim's life if she challenged the status quo, allegedly, supposedly. But here's the kicker. Nobody close to the show is laughing it off as just another wild internet rumor.
She was quitting right now. Both ESPN and Molly Qerim, they are trying to polish the They're trying to make this look like an amicable divorce. And look, maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. Maybe they couldn't come to an agreement and they agreed to amicably part ways. I'm more interested in...
We watched the timeline of intimidation unfold in plain sight, but most viewers missed the pattern. Qerim starts negotiating for a raise or a lateral move, requests that would be perfectly normal anywhere but the shadowy ecosystem of ESPN morning television. The top brass, led by Smith's not-so-invisible hand, dig in their heels. The next thing we know, the Sports Business Journal accidentally leaks news that Qerim will be leaving at the end of 2025, before she's ready to make it public. Is that a coincidence? Or a warning shot across the bow? She doesn't come back to the show, doesn't get her planned goodbye. Instead, her resignation lands in the form of a carefully worded Instagram story, her voice cracking between the lines as she thanks the most brilliant, passionate, and entertaining voices in sports. Smith, true to character, steps in the next morning on First Take with a tribute that's all soft lighting and syrupy nostalgia. But even his hug sounds more like a warning than a farewell. We asked around, and here's what emerges from the fog. Qerim's departure was so abrupt it sent ESPN's leadership into spin mode. Burke Magnus, president of content, was suddenly playing defense, telling The Athletic, "It's business. You try your best, and we just weren't totally aligned." Or, that's the party line. But if this was just business, why the panic? Why the closed-door meetings, the 30 to 45-day tryout period for her replacement, the corporate hand-wringing on the record? Why would a beloved decade-long anchor bolt with nothing more than a cryptic, "Stay tuned"? Magnus tried to tamp down the fire with his own brand of polished corporate speak. But the contrast was glaring. His sanitized version of events versus the raw, unspoken fear that you could see in Qerim's body language during her final episode. Go back and watch it. She's sitting bolt upright, the professional smile glued to her face like a hostage blinking out a Morse code distress call. Was she saying goodbye or was she running?
I looked up to Stephen A. Smith for a very, very long time. He was one of the reasons why I got into sports media, but then ended up meeting him. Wasn't the most, one of those don't meet your hero type experience. I don't know all the details, and I'm not going to tell you all the details because it's not your business. But I'm gonna be honest, it was an uncomfortable situation, and now watching him, get older, trying to go into the digital space, it can be a little uncomfortable.
Meanwhile, the gap in their paychecks, let's just say, it wasn't exactly subtle. Qerim, hosting the network's top-rated show, was pulling in $500,000 a year. Smith? Try $20 million, not counting his $36 million Sirius XM deal or the brand new Monday Night Football gig that ESPN handed him on a silver platter just days after Qerim's departure. You'd think with that kind of budget, ESPN could spare a couple million to keep their enormous part of our success happy. But that's not how the power structure works in Bristol. No, that kind of money is an insurance policy. Keep Stephen A. Smith happy, keep the machine running, and let everyone else fight for scrap. As Wiley pointed out, you're working at a network where Mina Kimes is making way more money than you, and Mina Kimes is number what on what show? You're no 2 on the no 1 show. It's not a math error, it's a message. If you want to see the hypocrisy at full throttle, rewind to Smith's Sirius XM monologue after Qerim's exit. He made a big show about how sad he was to lose her. To say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement. But he couldn't resist inserting himself into the narrative, taking the time to point out how he didn't know all the details, how the details, quite frankly, are none of y'all's business. It was the performance of a man who's learned to control the narrative by pretending to be above it. Smith, we're told, likes to keep people guessing. Even in his own words, that story is for her to tell. Do I have an idea? Of course I do. Am I going to share it with you? No. It's the classic Smith maneuver. Tease the audience, flex the knowledge, keep the leverage. Meanwhile, Qerim is left holding a stack of NDAs and forced smiles, carefully sidestepping any mention of her former co-host in public since the day she walked out.
Well, let's remember, wasn't it just last week Stephen A. was on air bragging about the people he stood up for to get paid and how many, Cam, I did it for Shannon Sharp and I did it for this person and that person. And when I look at the abrupt, I'm not coming into work tomorrow.
Yeah.
That also is maybe there's pointing a finger at Stephen A. Smith.
Insiders allege the real reason for her silence is the dirt Smith holds over her. We're not talking about the usual tabloid fodder, no recycled dating rumors or who said what over salad in the ESPN cafeteria. This is deeper. He's got something on her, one former producer claimed. That's why she walked away instead of fighting. No direct accusations, no lawsuits, just a mounting consensus that Qerim, for all her professionalism, was put in an impossible spot. She couldn't win the contract battle, and she couldn't risk the other shoe dropping. And just as the dust starts to settle, the universe hands Smith his next big assignment, a seat on Monday Night Football, a $100 million contract extension, and a company-wide pass to show up wherever he wants, whenever he wants. As for Qerim, she's out moderating UConn basketball panels, grinning through it all, while her former chair at First Take is still warm. ESPN's plan for her replacement? Corporate musical chairs, 30 to 45 days of auditions, maybe a little fanfare, then quietly slotting someone else into the gig that Qerim spent a decade building from the ground up. It's just business, right? Except for everyone paying attention, the real business looks a lot like intimidation. So we have to ask, if Stephen A. Smith could allegedly crush Molly Qerim with a whisper, what's stopping him from doing it again?
I also wonder, bro, from a human perspective, Molly was your sidekick for 10 years. Mm-hmm. We don't need to know she abruptly resigned. Yeah. Protect her at all costs.
Yeah.
That's my big thing, Social Trey.
I thought she was here for the end of the year. I guess she's done now.
Remember, she didn't want it to leak because Molly ends up putting out a statement that, hey, it's unfortunately leaked. I didn't want it to, etc. But protect her at all costs.
The moment Molly Qerim walked out, ESPN wasted no time vacuuming up the evidence she'd ever been there. Their so-called 30 to 45-day tryout parade, one guest host after another, each with a little more pep and a little less memory, wasn't just about finding the next warm body for that morning desk. It looked like a controlled purge, a live-action reboot where Qerim's decade of work got rinsed from the highlight reel and no one dared mention the real reason for her absence. Meanwhile, Stephen A. Smith didn't just keep his seat, he multiplied it. Days after Qerim's exit, Smith was front and center for Monday Night Football, strutting onto a new set like a man who just negotiated immunity for life. He made it plain on the record. They know whatever they need me for, I'm doing first take. But it's ESPN, not exactly the language of a guy worried about consequences. Not even the faintest whiff of remorse. The message was crystal. Qerim was replaceable. Smith was untouchable. On the other side of the broadcast wars, Qerim's next move was reduced to rumor and speculation. All those glowing farewell quotes couldn't hide the fact that her future hung by a thread of hearsay. A potential $2 million deal with FOX Sports, some stay-tuned promises, maybe a sideline gig moderating UConn basketball Q&A. Human-animal monolith, yeah, that's Noah Storsey. The network she helped build erased her before her chair even cooled, while the man at the center of her exodus racked up fresh roles and new seven-figure contracts. Why would ESPN reward Stephen A. Smith with even more power after the most dramatic exit in the show's history, while Qerim was left to piece together her reputation from scratch? What exactly did they value more, her contribution or his control?
Jason, I actually watched that whole video clip of Stephen A. Smith. I just thought it was funny. It ain't none of y'all business. It was a contract negotiation. Well, that was about the money. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for cluing it. It's always about the money, though. It's like in boxing. Why didn't this fight happen? Easy, there wasn't enough.
We need to look at the psychology behind the power plays, because this wasn't just about career ambitions. It was about leverage, secrets, and the threat of humiliation. Those close to the negotiations suggest that Smith's leverage over Qerim was more than just professional. What exactly did he know? Did it have anything to do with Qerim's personal disclosures? Her public 2023 struggle with endometriosis? A daily battle she bravely chose to reveal in her own words? The timing is suspicious. She went on record about a vulnerable health condition, possibly making herself a target in contract talks, where any perceived weakness could be turned into ammunition. Was it that? Or did Smith have something even more personal at his disposal? Stephen A. Smith has a history of weaponizing information and moments, and it's not subtle. Remember the on-air jab where he mocked Qerim for eating during commercial breaks, tossing out, "You can ask Molly to do a lot of things," asking her to fast and not eat? That's going to be a problem for her. It sounded like a joke, but it wasn't received as one, especially not by Qerim. That was no light-hearted office banter. On that set, it was a flex, a public reminder of who could steer the conversation, who got to frame the narrative, who could turn a coworker's routine into a punchline in front of millions. Fans saw Qerim stiffen, brush off the dig, but social media caught fire. Was it just a joke, or a not-so-subtle display of dominance? The same pattern showed up in Smith's clashes with Monica McNutt, with his tendency to shame or silence rather than support the women around him. It wasn't just debate, it was a loyalty test, and Qerim's refusal to play along, to laugh off every jab or toe every line, may have sealed her fate long before the contract talks ever got ugly.
I think we'll start with Molly Qerim. She, yesterday when we talked, we knew that she was leaving, but we didn't know she was leaving like immediately, which is an indication that, man, this thing's a bit more complicated than just they couldn't settle on the money. It just seems more seriously. She's off the show.
This is where ESPN's complicity comes into full view. Listen to Burke Magnus, the company's president of content, spinning the corporate wheel in interview after interview. There's no controversy here. There's no shoe that's going to drop. Gaslighting, plain and simple. Magnus knew the difference between an uncomfortable truth and a tidy headline, but stuck to his script with almost athletic discipline. Yet every time he insisted there was nothing to see, Marcellus Wiley and other insiders were pointing to the opposite. Wiley's version, where Smith's blessing was the only thing standing between Qerim and a fair contract, wasn't just rumor, it was common knowledge in the control room. And the inconsistencies piled up. Why did Qerim resign immediately after the SBJ leak? Why did Smith's tribute swing so quickly from syrupy praise to stony detachment on his radio show? Why did ESPN hustle to fill Qerim's seat with a parade of faceless replacements, never once pausing to answer the allegations? Even Emmanuel Acho, never one to mince words, said it best. Don't get clicks at the cost of a person who helped you build your empire and didn't just look the other way. They handed the empire to the guy who already owned it. And then there's the elephant in the control room. Smith's expanding empire, built on the ruins of everyone who dared to challenge his authority. While Qerim quietly retools her resume and negotiates with FOX, Smith is making cameos in every ESPN tentpole broadcast, the undisputed king of sports media. His smile on Monday Night Football isn't just triumphant, it's a signal to everyone else at the network. The message is chilling. Toe the line and you might get a seat at the table. Step out and you'll be erased faster than a highlight reel after a playoff sweep.
Whether she goes to FS1 or launches her own show on YouTube, I wish Molly Qerim nothing but the best. I don't want to see her fail, but at the same time, I don't see a path to success. It is hard to build an audience by yourself. It's hard to build and sustain an audience when it's just you.
From the moment Qerim's resignation became the talk of studio corridors, the ripple effect on other on-air personalities, especially women, was impossible to ignore. Behind the scenes, whispers multiplied as fast as the official narratives. Younger talent who once dreamed of moderating or sharing airspace with Smith began to question whether ambition was worth the risk. The precedent had been set. In this environment, the cost of challenging the pecking order wasn't just professional disappointment, but the real threat of vanishing mid-contract, mid-season without so much as a send-off. For every new face hoping to break through on First Take or SportsCenter, Qerim's sudden disappearance served as both a warning and a blueprint for what not to do. This climate of uncertainty bred a new kind of silence, far more powerful than any top-down memo. Female analysts who once spoke candidly about pay gaps, segment assignments, or the quirks of live television became noticeably more cautious, on air and off. Ideas that might have sparked vibrant debate were quietly pocketed. Moments of disagreement were dialed down or redirected, lest they be read as disloyalty. In editorial meetings, the urge to pitch bold topics or even just playful banter with Smith now came with an invisible asterisk. Proceed carefully, read the room, watch who's watching. The invisible pressure to self-censor wasn't written into contracts. It was absorbed through every episode, every personnel shuffle, every mysterious early exit that left more questions than answers.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Aware, thoughtful, and passionate.
What do you have too much of?
Shoes,
Guilty pleasure.
retail therapy.
What would you do if you didn't host First Take?
I would work for a global nonprofit or host a travel.
Veterans and newcomers alike weighed their options. Some, like Mina Kimes and Malika Andrews, had their own corporate armor in the form of new deals and growing fan bases, but even they navigated a more volatile landscape. Off-camera, producers traded rumors about safe topics and quietly mapped the network's new geography of power. Staffers who had once seen ESPN as a launchpad for careers now moved with measured steps, acutely aware that today's disagreement could be tomorrow's exile. The legacy of Qerim's exit wasn't just a missing anchor on morning TV. It was a shadow that stretched across every green room, every pitch meeting, every email thread, keeping everyone guessing where the boundaries truly lay. So what's left? The devastating implication that Molly Qerim's departure wasn't just a loss for the network. It was a warning to anyone watching from the wings. The rules aren't written in the contracts. They're written in the silence that follows a power play like this. We end up staring at Smith's face during his Monday Night Football debut. The lighting perfect, the grin unwavering. He's still here, the gatekeeper, the kingmaker. Qerim may be gone, but the question refuses to fade. How many others are still trapped in Stephen A. Smith's shadow? And what will it take for them to break free? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Does ESPN reward power over principle? Or is this just business as usual? We'll be watching, waiting, and digging for the truth. Until next time, stay sharp and don't blink. You might miss the next move,